Jim, we got Christian in New York. Pronouns are he, him. Christian, so how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I actually, I go on a lot of meet stranger sites, and I actually happened to meet one of your listeners, and we made an agreement that that I would call into this show, and he would call into a theist show. So he already put up his end of the deal. So I guess this is me putting up my end of the deal. So but my question to you guys today is kind of what we had, or the conversation, or the question we had in mind when we were talking on the site. So I guess my question is that I'm new to the faith. So I'm Catholic. I'm new to the faith, and my question is, should I abandon my faith because I don't necessarily know too much about it, or should I maintain or faith is the wrong word, but should I stay in my religion and explore, or kind of at least kind of critique my faith a little bit? Or should I completely, do you think I should just leave my faith completely and kind of step back and kind of look at what it is?
So I'm not going to answer that question because I don't want to give you advice. I want to ask you some other questions to help you come to that decision yourself, because my answer, obviously, I am an atheist and I am a former Catholic. So we can kind of guess what my answer would be, right? But that doesn't really help. I don't think help what you're trying to do here, which I think is care about what is true. Is that a fair statement?
Care about what is true in the sense
what is true,
right? Okay, yeah.
What conforms to reality the best? That's what is true, right? The things that conform to reality. Okay, so do you think that beliefs inform actions and actions have consequences?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think that it is okay for a married couple to use contraceptives?
No.
You are in direct violation of the Catholic Church. Catholic Church disagrees with you wholeheartely on that question. You cannot use contraceptives at all.
No, he said no.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I misheard you. Yeah, so then you're in compliance with that. There is a problem is what business of it of the Catholic Church is whether or not a couple uses contraceptives. And what is the problem?
Well, I guess the idea of using contraception is that, I think, I'm sure you're familiar with the idea, but, life begins at conception, and, that life is sacred, and, we can't really interrupt with that. If we do, it would be considered a sin.
But what we're talking about life before conception, which is what a contraceptive is.
Contraception prevents conception. So any argument you make about how life begins at conception is irrelevant to contraception.
Oh, okay. So I guess the way I'd put that is that I'd say, I took a little bit of my moral theology class, but I think the main thing we covered within this topic is that sex is sacred, and the two purposes of sex. So it's to procreate and to grow the bond closer between the two, in the marriage. And I believe that if you remove one of those, sex doesn't become sacred anymore. It becomes somewhat selfish in a sense.
So what makes sex sacred?
What makes anything sacred?
Yeah, that's a good question too.
I'd say God makes it sacred.
Okay, but
okay, so it's just God's opinion that something is sacred. Is that what you're saying, or is there some sort of objective measurement we can use to determine if something is sacred?
Well, I'd say there is some sort of divinity attached to that, but I think that divinity is kind of connected to God in a sort of way because God himself created the divine world along with the physical world.
How do you determine what divinity is? What if something has divinity attached to it? How do you determine that? What's your methodology?
Um, I'd say that whatever is revealed to us, I guess.
Well, how do you tell what's revealed?
I mean, through Jesus, I guess. And
Okay, I've never met Jesus. Have you met Jesus? Has Jesus revealed something to you? How do you know Jesus revealed anything to you?
not personally. I'd say that I've never seen him.
So what is the mechanism for you to know what Jesus has or has not revealed?
I guess there is none at the top of my head.
Isn't that a big
Okay.
problem
So-
to say? And now, granted, your first question was, should you abandon your beliefs because you don't know that much about them? No, well, first of all, I don't think that what you believe is a choice. You are either convinced that Catholicism is, the true cornerstone of God on earth, or you're not convinced. And so this isn't like a choice of, oh, I'm just going to give it up because I don't know enough. No, you're either convinced it's true or not. But when you say that you believe these things because of God or what God's revealed or what Jesus revealed, and then you say you don't have any way to show what Jesus revealed, why isn't that enough to say, wow, until I know what Jesus has revealed, I guess I can't believe this?
I mean, I guess for me, it comes from personal experience. Like, I grew up Catholic, but I only started taking my faith seriously, recently. And, I guess, me through prayer and, all that sorts of stuff, it has kind of helped me through life. And I guess, I say the crazy thing where I say, I felt something that, that couldn't really be explained. And that, I feel like that has kind of convinced me in a way.
Well, if you can't explain it, why are you attributing an explanation to it?
I guess through faith,
But wouldn't the most honest answer and the most truthful answer just be, I had an experience and I can't explain it? Isn't that the most to do? Is just attributing it to something supernatural or spiritual, just jumping to a conclusion without evidence? And is that truthful?
No, not with evidence. No.
Right. And to kind of go back to my question about how do you know what Jesus said? Now, you're a Catholic, so you have two traditions, actually, for knowing what Jesus said. One of those is the Bible, and there's a problem with the Bible, and that is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were not written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. We don't know who they were written by. They were the earliest copies we have are after Jesus's death. Now, if you've played the telephone game where, one person whispers something to the next person and that goes down 10 or 15 people and what you get out the other side is completely different, then what do you think's happened in the 50 or so years from Jesus's death until those first stories were written down? Do you think that those stories have changed?
I mean, it's likely, I'd say.
Okay,
but
that's a problem. Now, the other problem that you have, this is actually worse for Catholics. And the other one is that, according to Catholics, there is a verbal tradition that was handed down from the apostles to the early church to what we now call priests and bishops and popes and the whole hierarchy we have now. Do you think that oral tradition has changed in the last 2,000 years?
I think in a sense it has.
Yes, it has. It has a lot. If you go and study the history of the Catholic Church over the last 2,000 years, it is a history of changing with the times, and it is a history of trying to survive. It is not necessarily a history that will reveal to you the truth of what Jesus Christ said.
Right.
So I have some related questions, Christian.
Okay.
So you're opposed to contraception because someone told you that's what God wants. And yet the Bible is silent on contraception. And the Bible also says, let God be true and every man a liar. and you've acknowledged that you don't have any way of telling what Jesus did or didn't say other than that you're listening to somebody else. So how comfortable are you suggesting that other people
Well, I think. Well,
should not use contraception because somebody else told you that's what God wants?
Well, I think something that the Catholic Church does have is kind of an extra how do I say this? Like I don't know, proof or like so we rely heavily on apparitions to confirm our faith. So like the apparition of Jesus to Saint Faustina or
have you experienced an apparition?
What?
Have you experienced an apparition?
No, I have not. But
do you have any way to demonstrate that any apparition has actually ever occurred rather than just the reports of an apparition?
Well, I'd say yes. Well, so
cool.
The example I used earlier, like Saint Faustina. Saint Faustina, her diary, it was written around in World War II, and her diary was written not around World War II, before World War II. And when she was writing her diary and writing down everything Jesus was telling to her, Jesus was telling her things that would happen in the future if, for example, the world didn't pray the rosary enough. And those things eventually did happen on the exact date.
So do you know what specifically those prophecies were?
I can't remember the whole book, but I'm not sure if I have time, but I could definitely double check here because I have the book with me.
All right. Because there's interestingly enough, I don't know who Saint Faustina is. I never heard of her. And so I am actually having to look her up. And one of the quotes here is, "You'll prepare the world for my final coming." And I'm like, if that was true, I would probably know who she is, but I don't. So anyway, go on.
Yeah. And when I asked if you had any way to demonstrate that any sort of apparition actually took place, and you thought you did, your evidential proof was that, well, what this person said that Jesus revealed to them eventually did come true, except that what does it mean to say, hey, there's going to be X happening if people don't pray the rosary enough? See, in order for any prophecy to have any sort of bearing or value, it needs to be specific and answerable by a single set of circumstances. You can't just say, well, there's going to be a war if you guys don't pay me enough. Because how much is enough? How much rosary praying is enough? It seems like you've been told a bunch of stories and you've just believed the stories. It's not like there's evidence that the stories are true or that the foundations of them are true. That's the point that I'm getting to.
Well, I guess I'm still not convinced because I've looked into the miracles of the Catholic Church, and the thing about the Catholic Church is that if we look at exorcisms, for example, when the church or when somebody requests an exorcism, the Catholic Church doesn't say, oh, we immediately believe you and we're going to give you an exorcism. They go through a series of psychiatrists and like people who are experts in the mental field.
Mm-hmm.
What?
Right. So there's a problem with this, though. Sure. Do you know what the logical fallacy that the Catholic Church is engaged in by doing all that?
No, I do not.
It's an argument from ignorance. They're saying we don't know what else it could be, therefore it must be demonic. Therefore, we're going to perform this ritual.
Yeah, there's been no demonstration in the entire history even within the sciences. They can go and talk to psychologists. But there's nothing in psychology about demons or spirits. And it is the church's position on blaming mental illness on demons and spirits that held back proper psychological treatment for ages. There's no good evidence that any such thing as a demon exists or has ever been exorcised.
Well, I think the way I framed that was kind of interpreted wrong. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that when the Catholic Church, gets these requests for an exorcisms, they don't immediately come to the conclusion that these mental illnesses are. And
they shouldn't ever come to the conclusion that they're caused by demons unless they can prove they're caused by demons.
Right, which would mean first proving that demons exist.
Suggesting that the Catholic Church is now better about mental health issues than they were 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago is completely irrelevant as to whether or not there are any such things as demons to exorcise. How do you demonstrate that there's actually a demon and it can be exorcised?
Well, so again, so let me explain the process again. So again, when the Catholic Church receives requests to do an exorcism, they go.
No, so here's the problem. We're telling you the process is fine. So the process leads you to this person does not have any psychological issues. This person does not have any problems with the brain. There's no imbalance, chemical imbalances in the brain. There is no physical reason for this person to be exhibiting this behavior we're calling demonic possession. I grant you that. That's fine. But the next thing they do is say, because it's none of these, it must be demonic possession. And that's the fallacy. Because they haven't proven that, one, demons exist, and two, that a demon did it. Is literally saying that, the equivalent of saying that I have eliminated all of these reasons why this person died, therefore it must be Matt. Well, that's literally what you're doing. And that's not the way evidence and proof works. That's not the way that any of that works. So what is your evidence that demons exist? And then what is your evidence they possess people? And then finally, what's your evidence that they could be exorcised? What proves that a demon is possessing someone?
So, I'd like to answer those questions in, I guess in one go, but, so you guys agreed with the process. So when these exorcisms happen, priests obviously go through these rites, right? So these rites include reading texts and praying different prayers, and, prayers of deliverance basically. And I think where the evidence comes strong is that the reaction of these people to these certain prayers of deliverance and scriptural texts resonate with the fact that demons are real, in the sense that, these demons or, these people who are supposedly possessed respond to these scriptural texts in a negative way, or as, they don't like.
Yeah, I'd recommend reading Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. Christian, have you ever been a subject of an exorcism? Have you ever been in the room during an exorcism?
No, I have not.
How do you know everything you know about exorcisms?
Simply through what priests tell me and documents in the church.
How would we go about, priests have told a whole bunch of things. What percentage of what priests tell you is true?
Well, with the people who are exorcised, I guess that could...
No. What I said is, what percentage of what priests tell you is true?
Not 100%, that's for sure.
Yeah, but do you know the percentage?
No, I do not.
Can you even guess? Let's just talk about just what priests say about God, religion, demons, the supernatural, not what they said about a football game, but things related to Catholicism. Do you have any way of guessing what percentage of what they tell you is actually true? Because I don't.
No, I don't either.
And so we're in the situation where we don't know how much of what we're being told is true. Here's the $1 million question. If a priest told me 10 things, well, let me knock it down, make it easy. A priest told me 5 things. How would we go about figuring out if those 5 things were true? Because the methodology that allows you to determine how you go about figuring out which of those things are true is critical. And it's the reason why science doesn't accept demons. Science doesn't make declarations about the supernatural. There isn't a single ability, a single incident in the history of the world where a miracle of any sort has been confirmed. There have been tons of them claimed. They're claimed all the time, and yet somehow God just still won't regrow amputees' limbs. Why is that?
I'd say that's that's God's plan, I guess. Like these bad things happen for a reason.
Wow. Okay. So God will remove demons from people, but he won't heal limbs because that's his plan. Well, that seems to be like the most excuse-worthy response I think I've ever heard. Because when faced with the proposition that you don't know how much of this is true, you don't have any way to investigate it, and we're trying to figure out how reality works, and your response seems to be like, "Oh, he'll do this, but he won't do that because that's his plan." Well, that's garbage. I mean, that is a self-fulfilling set of circumstances there, where that's heads I win, tails you lose.
I mean, if we consider, the position of God and who he is, he's a divine being that transcends
How do we know that?
matter and space.
Yeah.
I have no information on who God is or what he is. Where did you get that information?
Um,
From the people who you can't tell if they're telling you the truth?
well, yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, Christian. I'm incredibly impressed with your honesty in the face of difficult questions, because most other people avoid them or hang up. I want to tell you, I wasn't a Catholic. Jim was. I was a Southern Baptist. And so even though we're coming at it from slightly different directions, these are the questions that stuck with me, that were like, hang on a minute, what evidence do I actually have for any of this stuff? Because I believed my mom thinks she has seen demons with her own eyes. She saw a demon of alcoholism on my grandfather's shoulder. And eventually he stopped drinking and never went back to it, except maybe he did. Who knows? But the notion that my mom thinks she saw the demon of alcoholism, that's just something I grew up with, and demons were real. And then when I began investigating, the question then becomes, okay, what reason do I have to think this is real? And I kept coming up against a wall every time I looked around. It's, where's the evidence? And this is the only thing I'm trying to get to you, Christian, is because your original question is, should I give up my religion because it's new to me? And the answer is no. You should give it up because it's not convincing and shouldn't be convincing. And if you still find it convincing, then of course you're not going to give it up, because belief isn't a matter of choice. But if you look around and you say, wow, everything I've learned about this religion is because somebody else told me, and yet I can't get proof. And when I push back and say, how can I tell if this is God or not? What you get is, well, what other explanation could it be? Or if the prophecies seem to come true, then maybe it must be God. Or, hey, you can't prove it's not God. Or do you want to take that risk? Or all of it is, it's God's, all part of God's plan. And as I don't know, as a Southern Baptist, my view at the time was that there's nothing that happens that isn't in accordance with God's plan. And the only way that makes sense is if God created the universe knowing everything that was going to happen and decided that I would be an atheist bound for hell. What? Right. It's just bizarre. Now, I know in Catholicism it's going to be different, but if you're just taking everything on some priest's word, what are a priest's qualifications in the entire history of the universe, entire history of Christendom and Catholicism? What expertise has a priest demonstrated? Because a biologist has an expertise in biology. A priest seems to, yes, you can have an expertise in the stories, but not the truth behind it. There's been no demonstration that there's a God or spirits or anything for them to know anything about. So really, priests are the social leeches that are the experts in the fan fiction surrounding a God. And so you might as well claim that you're a Harry Potter expert, not you, but somebody might as well claim they're a Harry Potter expert because they know the books and the movies backwards and forwards. But that doesn't tell you anything about whether or not Harry Potter's real. He's not, but.
Okay.
And on the exorcism question, here's what I found when I looked into it. You've got people with mountains of evidence that there's nothing wrong with them, except they still behave in ways that people describe as being demon possessed. The exorcism happens and the evidence trail stops, and that person is considered cured. Here's my question. Where's the mountains of evidence for that? Do they go back through those same battery of tests? What happens to that evidence? Where's the evidence? Because here's the question. If the ritual has some sort of efficacy, what is the efficacy? What is the mechanism by which the demon is evicted, if it exists? Or is it simply a placebo effect where the person believes they are demon possessed until they've been exorcised? And this is the evidence you need to look for. Not just accept that because the Catholic Church does its due diligence, because it doesn't. It's fine that it tries to prove that there's nothing wrong with the person before concluding, but that's still an argument from ignorance. And so that's what you need to look for, is proof that demons exist. Those are the questions you need to ask. Where's the evidence after the exorcism that this person is okay? Where is that evidence? And find it if you can.
I want to pause here, Christian, and give you a chance to respond, and then we're probably just going to move on to another caller, because I suspect that, especially in a 2-on-1 situation where we're going through a lot of information, this may be incredibly overwhelming and just deserving of some thought. But I wanted to give you kind of a final word before we moved on what you thought of this, and maybe please call us back another time to continue.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely have gained a lot of things I should definitely think about, and I definitely agree that the people that I've always listened to, I have no way to kind of prove their credibility in that sense, but I'll definitely look into it more, and I appreciate I appreciate you guys so much for kind of taking my call and kind of being the respectful people you are. So for that.
And we greatly appreciate the fact. See, this is what happens when people actually answer the questions asked, so that you can kind of move towards something rather than just nuh-uh. But
right.
Anyway, please call us back and let us know what you think. And and by the way, even if you don't ever change your mind, if you come up with better reasons to be a Catholic, we're both interested in those.
I'm really interested. So.
All right, sounds good. I mean, I'm going to be exploring my faith. As I said, I'm new to my faith, and I'm going to be exploring it. So, I'll definitely come back to you guys and call back with anything that comes up to mind. So, thank you again.
Okay,
sweet.
All right,
thanks a lot, Christian.
Bye.
Appreciate it.